Captain Elias Varan moved carefully through the silent halls of the alien station. His footsteps echoed against the metal floor, the sound far too loud for a place that had been empty for centuries. The air was thin and stale, heavy with dust, yet there was still power running somewhere deep inside. Faint lights flickered along the walls, giving the corridors a sickly glow. He carried a small lantern in one hand and a plasma cutter in the other, though he knew neither gave him much comfort in this place. He was alone, stranded after his ship's engine core had burned out, and this station was his last hope to find replacement parts or at least some working power cells. As he walked further, his helmet scanner picked up faint energy readings. That meant something here was still alive, or at least still running. He told himself it was just machinery, some leftover defense system or maybe an energy generator. But deep inside, a quiet unease settled in his chest. Old stations like this were usually picked clean by scavengers long ago. If something still remained, there had to be a reason. The corridor bent sharply, leading to a wide chamber filled with broken machinery and shattered glass tubes that once held some kind of liquid. Symbols of an unknown language covered the walls, sharp and elegant like they had been carved with care. Elias moved closer to one of the consoles, brushing off dust with his glove. The screen flickered faintly but did not respond to his touch. He sighed and turned back, and that was when he felt it. A sudden movement. A whisper of air, and then, before he could even raise his weapon, something fast and strong grabbed him from behind. He was slammed against the cold wall, his plasma cutter clattering to the floor. His lantern spun away, throwing wild beams of light across the room. He struggled, but the grip that held him was like iron. Two pale hands pressed against his shoulders, long nails digging lightly into his suit without piercing it. Human. The voice was soft, almost melodic, but carried a weight of hunger. He turned his head and saw her. A tall figure, female in shape but undeniably alien. Her skin was pale with a faint silver glow under the dim lights. Her eyes burned crimson, glowing faintly like embers in the dark, and from her lips sharp fangs gleamed as she leaned close. "I want your blood," she whispered, her breath chilling his ear. Elias's heart pounded. He had heard stories of creatures that fed on life, but he never thought he would face one. She looked at him not like an enemy soldier or a stranger, but like prey. Yet in her eyes he also saw something else, pain, desperation, maybe even sorrow. She trembled slightly as though she was forcing herself not to act on instinct. Her strength kept him pinned, but her hesitation gave him hope. "You don't need to do this," Elias said quickly, his voice steady though fear crawled through him. "If you kill me, you get nothing. I can help you. I have supplies, medicine." His words cut off as she pressed him harder against the wall, her crimson gaze burning into his. For a moment he thought she would ignore him, that he would end here as nothing more than a meal. But then she let out a shaky breath, almost a sigh. "Supplies cannot ease the hunger, only blood." Her voice wavered and she closed her eyes briefly as if struggling against herself. "You would not understand. My people have starved for centuries. I'm the last that remains. Without life to drink, I will fall into dust." Her words struck him. The last of her kind? He searched her face, wondering if this was a trick, but the sadness there was real. She looked weary, hollow like someone who had lived too long on empty promises. Elias swallowed hard, trying to think. He knew he couldn't fight her strength. His only chance was to reason with her. "What's your name?" he asked. The question caught her off guard. She blinked, her grip loosening slightly. For a moment she only stared, uncertain, as though she hadn't heard such a simple thing in centuries. "Seraphine," she said at last, her voice softer now, almost fragile. "Once they called me Warlord Queen Executioner. Now I'm nothing but hunger." Elias forced a small nod, even as her hands still pressed against him. "Seraphine," he repeated. "If you kill me, then I really will be nothing. But if you let me live, maybe I can help. Maybe there's another way. You said your people starved for centuries. That means you survived. That means you can control it." Her eyes narrowed, considering him. He saw the war in her gaze, between hunger and reason, instinct and choice. Slowly, her grip loosened further until he could finally breathe properly. She did not release him fully, but she no longer crushed him against the wall. Her fangs glinted as she spoke again. "You are bold, human. Bold enough to speak instead of scream. That makes you different." The lantern lay on the floor, its beam catching the red glow of her eyes. Elias knew he was still in danger, but he also knew he had sparked something in her. Curiosity, maybe even respect. She wanted his blood, yes, but she had not taken it yet, and that meant there was still a chance. Not fear me? Elias forced a steady voice, though his heart still raced. Of course I fear you. You're stronger than me, faster. If you wanted, you could end me in seconds. But fear doesn't solve anything. I'm still alive, and while I am, I'll try to find another way. Seraphine's lips curved slightly, not quite a smile, but close to one. Another way. You speak as if you know what you offer. My people were bound by hunger from the moment we were born. There is no way but blood. Then let's make a deal, Elias said, surprising even himself with the boldness of his tone. You said you are the last of your kind. That means you're alone. If you kill me, you stay alone. If you spare me, maybe we can help each other survive. She leaned closer, her face only inches from his. He could see the faint silver glow beneath her skin, like threads of energy pulsing under the surface. And what will you give me in return, human? Her voice was low, dangerous, yet carrying a strange softness. Elias swallowed. He knew the answer she expected, and it terrified him. I'll let you take some of my blood, but only if you promise to control yourself. Not enough to kill me, just enough to help you survive. The room seemed to grow colder as she considered his words. Her crimson eyes narrowed, and for a moment he thought she might attack anyway. But then she pulled back slightly, her hand slipping from his shoulders. She stepped away, her long hair shifting like a shadow as she moved. You are either brave, she murmured, or very foolish. Humans are strange. When faced with death, most creatures cling to life with teeth and nails. You offer it willingly, though you shake with fear. I don't want to die, Elias said firmly, but I don't want to throw my life away either. If this helps us both survive, then it's worth the risk. For the first time, Seraphine's expression softened. Her crimson glow dimmed just a little. Perhaps you are different, she said. Perhaps this is why my people once respected humans and feared them. Elias blinked. Your people knew about humans? She nodded slowly, her eyes distant as if remembering something long buried. Long ago, when my empire still ruled the stars, whispers spread of humans, fragile bodies, short lives, but spirits that burned with fire. Many of my kind dismissed you as weak. Others warned that weakness could hide strength. Now standing before you, I see those whispers were not lies. Elias wasn't sure how to answer. He bent down, picked up his lantern, and held it steady. The light shone across Seraphine's pale form, casting long shadows against the wall. If that's true, then maybe you should listen to me. If you need blood to survive, I'll give you a little. But in return, you help me find what I came here for. I need power cells, energy sources, anything to repair my ship. Seraphine's red eyes flickered with thought. For a moment, she seemed almost human in her hesitation. Finally, she nodded. Very well, human. A bargain. I will guide you through this station. There are secrets here you cannot face alone. In return, she paused, her fangs glinting faintly. In return, I will take only enough to live. Elias let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. Then we have a deal. The air between them shifted. No longer predator and prey, but not yet allies. Something fragile stood in its place. Trust, thin as glass, ready to break at the slightest touch. As they moved deeper into the station together, Elias couldn't help but glance at her from time to time. Seraphine walked with an elegance that seemed almost unnatural, her steps silent, her presence commanding even in silence. She touched the walls lightly as they passed, as if remembering what this place once was. This was not always a tomb, she said quietly. Once this station was alive with voices. Soldiers, scholars, servants. Now only echoes remain. Why did it fall? Elias asked, curiosity breaking through his caution. Her eyes darkened. Hunger, my people's curse. We conquered many worlds, but nothing could satisfy the need. In the end, it consumed us as surely as fire consumes wood. I survived. Because I refused to fall, but survival is not life. Not when it is empty. Elias said nothing. He could hear the weight in her words, the loneliness of someone who had lived too long. Part of him pitied her, even as fear still lingered in his chest. She was dangerous, but she was also broken. At last they reached another chamber, larger than the last. Strange machines hummed faintly, their lights flickering with traces of power. Elias's scanner beeped softly, picking up energy readings. His heart lifted. This is it, he whispered. There might be something usable here. But Seraphine's eyes narrowed, her gaze fixed on the shadows above. We are not alone, she said softly. Elias froze. The silence of the station was broken by a faint grinding sound, like machinery waking from sleep. In the darkness, shapes began to stir. His body, almost like an alarm. More shapes stirred in the dark, crawling down the walls like spiders. Seraphine's fangs glinted as she hissed softly. "Stay close to me." Before Elias could answer, she moved with a burst of speed that left his eyes struggling to follow. She leapt at the nearest sentinel, her hands slamming into its chest with unnatural strength. Metal groaned and cracked as she ripped it apart in seconds, wires sparking as it collapsed. Elias stood frozen for a moment, stunned by the sheer force she displayed. For all her elegance, she was terrifying when she fought. But there was no time to stare. Another sentinel dropped in front of him, claws reaching out. Elias ducked and fired his plasma cutter. The blue beam hissed against the machine's armor, cutting a smoking line across its chest. It staggered back but didn't fall. "Human!" Seraphine's voice rang out sharply. "Aim for the joints. Break their legs!" Elias gritted his teeth and adjusted his aim. When the sentinel lunged again, he fired at the knee joint. Sparks flew and the machine collapsed to the floor. Seraphine was already there, finishing it with a brutal strike that snapped its head free from the body. The room filled with the sound of battle. More guardians poured in, their glowing eyes flickering in the dim light. Elias fought desperately, using his plasma cutter to slow them down while Seraphine tore through them with a mixture of speed and raw strength. Still, for everyone they destroyed, 2 more seemed to appear. "This won't stop," Elias shouted, ducking behind a console as claws scraped across the metal surface. "There are too many." Seraphine crushed another sentinel's skull with her bare hands, her breath sharp and quick. "Then we must reach the core chamber. If we destroy the control node, the rest will fall silent." Elias nodded, though he wasn't sure where that was, but Seraphine seemed to know. She dashed forward, slicing through the machines that blocked her path. Elias followed as best as he could, his lungs burning, his arms aching from holding the plasma cutter steady. They forced their way through another corridor, the sound of metal pursuing them echoing behind. Sparks lit the air, the station trembling as if it did not want them there. Finally, the passage opened into a vast circular room. At the center stood a tall pillar, wires and cables running up its length like veins. The pillar pulsed with faint blue light. "That is the control node," Seraphine said, pointing toward it. Her crimson eyes glowed brighter as she stepped forward. "Once it is destroyed, the Guardians will fall." Elias stared at the towering structure. "How do we destroy something like that?" "My cutter won't do much against it." Seraphine turned to him, her expression unreadable. "Then I will do it. But I will need strength, more than I have now." She took a step closer, her eyes fixed on him. "Human, Elias, our bargain. The time has come." Elias's chest tightened. He knew what she meant. She wanted his blood. The thought made his throat dry, but he remembered the deal he had made. If he refused now, they might both die. He steadied himself, holding her gaze. "Only enough to help you. No more." Her lips curved slightly, her fangs catching the light. "You have my word." She moved closer, her hand resting lightly against his arm. Her touch was cold but strangely gentle. Elias closed his eyes, bracing himself. He felt a sharp sting, brief but piercing, followed by a strange pull like his strength was being drained away. Yet it was not painful, more like a deep weakness spreading through him. Within moments, she pulled back. Her crimson eyes blazed brighter than ever, her body trembling as if energy flooded through her veins. She looked stronger, more alive, as though a dying flame had suddenly roared back into fire. "Enough," Elias said weakly, his knees shaking. "That's enough." She nodded, her voice softer than before. "You kept your word. Now I will keep mine." Turning to the control node, Seraphine launched herself at it with terrifying force. Her hands tore through cables, her strikes pounding against the structure again and again. Sparks erupted, blue light flashing wildly as alarms screamed through the chamber. The Guardians surged in, trying to defend their heart. But Elias used what little strength he had left to fire at their legs, slowing them just enough for Seraphine to finish the task. At last, with one final strike, the control node split apart, its light dying in an instant. Across the chamber, the Guardians froze mid-motion. One by one, they collapsed, lifeless, their glowing eyes fading to black. Silence fell. Elias leaned against the console, his chest heaving. Seraphine stood tall in the center of the ruined room, her crimson eyes bright but calm now. Slowly, she turned toward him. "Our bargain is honored," she said quietly. "You live, And so do I. Elias nodded, though weakness still pulled at his limbs. Then let's keep it that way. We have more to find, and more to face. For the first time, Seraphine gave him something that was almost a smile. Not hunger, not cruelty, but something close to respect. Together, they stood in the silence of the broken station, the fragile bond between human and alien growing stronger with every choice. The room was quiet now, filled only with the smell of burned wires and the faint hiss of cooling machines. Elias leaned heavily against the console, his body weak from what he had given. Seraphine stood in the center, her pale skin glowing faintly as if new life had awakened inside her. The silence felt almost heavy, like the station itself was holding its breath. Elias finally pushed himself upright, his lantern still flickering in his hand. That was close, he muttered, his voice rough. If we hadn't reached the core, we'd both be scrap metal by now. Seraphine turned her crimson gaze toward him. Her eyes no longer burned with wild hunger. Instead, they carried a steadier light, calmer, controlled. You risked yourself, she said softly. You gave me strength when you could have kept it. That is not something my kind would ever do. We always take. Elias gave a small, tired smile. Maybe that's the difference between us. Humans, we share. Sometimes it's the only way we survive. Her head tilted slightly as if testing his words in her mind. Share, she repeated, almost tasting the idea. Strange, dangerous, and yet. She did not finish, but the pause carried meaning. They moved on from the chamber, stepping over the fallen guardians. The deeper they went into the station, the stronger the faint hum of power became. Elias followed his scanner's readings, hoping to find working energy cells, while Seraphine guided him with memory. She had lived here once, long ago, when the station had been alive. Every turn of the corridor, every strange symbol on the walls she seemed to know. This was not just a fortress, she said as they walked. It was a place of research. My people sought answers here. A cure perhaps for our endless hunger. Elias looked at her sharply. A cure? You mean there was a way to stop needing blood? Her crimson eyes dimmed. Perhaps. But if there was, we never found it. For it was hidden, locked away. Too many feared what it would mean. Our hunger was not just a weakness. It was our power. It made us feared across the stars. Elias thought about her words as they passed into a new hall, one lined with long glass tanks. Most were broken, shards glittering on the floor. A few still held strange liquid, glowing faintly blue. Inside one of them floated a mass of twisted wires and tissue. Some forgotten experiment left unfinished. He felt a shiver run down his spine. Your people experimented on themselves, he guessed quietly. Seraphine's expression did not change, but her silence was answer enough. They pressed deeper, and at last reached a chamber that seemed untouched by time. Tall pillars lined the walls, covered in carvings of the Nixari language. At the far end stood a sealed door, massive and ancient, its surface glowing with faint patterns. Elias's scanner spiked with energy the closer he came. Whatever lay behind that door still had power. This is it, Elias said. Something important is inside. Seraphine's eyes narrowed as she studied the door. Her pale hand brushed across the glowing symbols, and they flickered as if recognizing her touch. The archives, she whispered. I remember now. This door leads to the heart of the station. Knowledge was stored there. Secrets my people wanted buried. Elias stepped beside her. Then we need to get in. Maybe there's something we can use. Something to help both of us. Before she could answer, the symbols on the door flared brightly. A deep metallic voice filled the chamber, speaking in the Nixari tongue. Elias couldn't understand, but Seraphine's eyes hardened. What is it saying? He asked. It calls me traitor, she said quietly. It recognizes I stand with you, a human. The station does not forgive betrayal. As if in answer, the walls shook and heavy panels slid open. From the darkness, the constructs advanced, their spears crackling with energy. Elias's hands trim. Bled slightly, but he steadied himself. Then we fight. Like before? Seraphine glanced at him, her crimson eyes catching the lantern's glow. For a moment, she almost smiled. You are stubborn, human, very well. We fight. The first construct lunged, its spear thrusting forward with deadly precision. Seraphine moved like lightning, twisting aside and striking its chest. The armor held, but her strength dented it. Elias fired at another, his plasma cutter leaving a glowing scar across its side. Sparks flew, but still it pressed on. The chamber filled with chaos again. Clashing metal, flashing light, the sharp hiss of plasma fire. Elias fought desperately, dodging the powerful strikes while Seraphine met them head-on, her movements fueled by the strength she had taken earlier, yet even she seemed strained. These constructs were stronger than the Guardians built for war. Between blows, Elias shouted, "If these are your people's soldiers, then maybe they're guarding the cure." "The thing you said was hidden." Seraphine slammed her fist into one construct's head, cracking its helmet. "Perhaps," she growled, "but that means the cure was real, and they did not want us to find it." The thought struck Elias like a spark. If the Nixari had locked away their cure, maybe they had feared losing their power more than losing their lives. That meant he and Seraphine were walking into something far greater than either of them expected. The last construct finally fell, its body sparking on the floor. Silence returned once more, heavy and tense. Both Elias and Seraphine stood breathing hard, the glow of the sealed door casting long shadows across their faces. Elias wiped sweat from his brow. "If there's a cure behind this door, then we have to find it, for you. Maybe even for others." Seraphine's crimson eyes met his. For the first time, there was no hunger in them at all, only a strange, uncertain hope. "Then we go together," she said. And as the great door began to stir, opening slowly with a deep rumble, both human and alien braced themselves for the secrets waiting inside. The ancient door opened slowly, heavy stone and metal grinding against each other. A wave of cold air swept out, carrying the scent of dust and age. Elias lifted his lantern higher, the trembling light pushing back the darkness. Beyond the doorway stretched a vast chamber, its walls lined with towering pillars of crystal and steel. Strange machines stood silent, covered in the marks of time, yet some of them still glowed faintly with blue light. Seraphine stepped forward, her crimson eyes narrowing as she looked around. Her movements slowed, as if the weight of memory pressed down on her. "This place," she whispered, "I remember it now. The heart of the station. This is where my people work to end our hunger." Elias followed carefully, his boots crunching against a layer of dust. "You mean the cure?" She gave a small nod, her gaze fixed on one of the glowing pillars. "Yes, many among us believed the hunger was our curse. They searched for ways to be free of it, but others feared what that freedom meant. To them, our hunger was strength. Without it, they believed we would fall." Elias let his lantern sweep across the room. The pillars were covered with symbols, Nixari writing carved deep into the crystal. Between them stood large consoles, their surfaces cracked but still alive with faint energy. He moved toward one of them, brushing away layers of dust. "If there's information here, maybe I can get it working." Seraphine watched him, her expression unreadable. "Why do you care, human? This cure was meant for my people, not yours." Elias gave a small shrug, his fingers tracing the controls. "Because you're not just your people anymore. You're the last of them, and if there's even a chance to free you from this curse, then it matters. Besides," he looked up at her, his voice firm, "humans don't walk away from hope, not when it's standing right in front of them." For a long moment she said nothing. Her crimson gaze softened and something strange flickered in her eyes. Not hunger, not sorrow, but respect. She turned her face away, hiding it quickly. "Strange creature," she murmured. The console crackled faintly and symbols lit up across its surface. Elias tapped carefully, guessing at the patterns, while Seraphine stepped closer to guide him. Together they managed to unlock part of the system. A projection flickered to life above the console, showing the image of a Nixari scientist recorded long ago. The voice spoke in Seraphine's language, but she translated as it played. "They found a way," she explained. "A way to reshape the body, to change the blood itself. No more hunger, no more need to feed on others. But the leaders forbade it. They said it was weakness. They said it would destroy who we were." Elias frowned. "So they buried it. Locked it away down here, guarded by machines." Seraphine's hands clenched at her sides. "They chose power over survival. They chose death." The projection shifted, showing strange diagrams. Nixari bodies, their veins glowing, energy flowing through them. Then it faded away, leaving the chamber silent once more. Elias turned to Seraphine. "If this cure is real, then we have to finish what they started." Her crimson eyes burned brighter, not with hunger, but with determination. "And if it destroys me?" Elias shook his head. "Then at least you tried. At least you chose something better than endless hunger." She stared at him, silent for a long while. At last she gave a small nod. "You speak like a leader, yet you are only one man. How can a single human carry such weight? Elias gave a faint smile. Because sometimes one person is enough. Before she could answer, a low rumble shook the chamber. The pillars pulsed brighter and the floor beneath them trembled. From the far side of the room, more constructs emerged, taller than before, their armor heavier, their movements slower but filled with power. Seraphine's eyes narrowed. The last guardians. They will not let us pass. Elias gritted his teeth and lifted his plasma cutter. Then we don't give them a choice. The guardians advanced, their heavy footsteps echoing through the chamber. Seraphine moved first, leaping into the air with incredible speed. Her fist slammed into one construct's chest, sending it crashing back into a pillar. The pillar cracked, light spilling out like liquid fire. Elias aimed at another, firing again and again at its joints until sparks burst from its legs. But these guardians were stronger. One swung its massive arm, striking the ground so hard that Elias stumbled. Another swung its spear, forcing Seraphine to dodge with narrow grace. The fight was harder than before, every strike shaking the chamber. Elias fought with all the strength he had left, his plasma cutter glowing hot. He thought of his ship, stranded and powerless, of the long silence of space, of the promise he had made to Seraphine. He refused to give up. Together they fought side by side. She was the storm, fierce and unyielding. He was the flame, small but steady, burning against the dark. Slowly, painfully, the guardians fell one by one. When the last construct collapsed, sparks dying in its broken frame, silence returned once more. Elias sank to one knee, exhausted. Seraphine stood tall, her chest rising and falling with sharp breaths. The chamber was damaged, cracks running through the pillars, energy spilling like light through broken glass. But the sealed platform at the far end still glowed strong. Seraphine looked at it with steady eyes. That is where the cure lies, she said quietly. But it will not give itself freely. It will demand a price. Elias forced himself to his feet, his lantern trembling in his hand. Then we'll pay it. Together. For the first time, Seraphine did not hide her expression. A faint, true smile touched her lips, sharp and sad but real. Together, she agreed, and with that word, they stepped toward the heart of the station, where the final secret of the Nixari awaited. The platform at the center of the chamber rose slowly, revealing a circular structure of glass and metal. Inside it, glowing streams of liquid light pulsed like veins weaving around a crystal core. Strange symbols floated in the air above it, shifting and twisting as if alive. Elias stared at it in awe, his lantern trembling in his hand. "This is it," Seraphine whispered. Her voice carried both fear and wonder. "The Blood Forge. The heart of the cure. My people built it but never dared to use it." Elias stepped closer, feeling the energy in the air pressing against his skin like a heavy weight. The glow seemed to reach for him, reacting to his presence. "It looks alive," he murmured. "It is alive," Seraphine replied. "Not in the way flesh is, but in the way stars are. It is both machine and will. It was designed to shape what flows within us." Elias turned his gaze to her. "So if you enter it, it could change you. End your hunger." Her crimson eyes fixed on the core. "Or it could unmake me entirely." The Nixari were not brave enough to test it. Perhaps they feared they would lose themselves. Perhaps they were right. Elias was silent for a moment. The thought of losing her, this strange, fierce companion, made his chest tighten. She was dangerous, yes, but she was also more alive than anyone he had ever met. He thought of the moments they had shared, the battles fought side by side, the rare glimpse of her smile. He did not want her to vanish into light and dust. "You don't have to do this," he said quietly. "You've survived this long. You could survive longer." She turned to him, her face unreadable. "Survival is not life. Hunger is not living. I am tired, human, tired of centuries spent as a shadow. If this gives me even a chance at freedom, then I must try." Elias nodded slowly. He saw the determination in her eyes and knew there was no turning her away. "Then I'll be here. Whatever happens, you won't face it alone." Seraphine studied him for a long moment. Then she stepped closer, placing a cold hand briefly on his arm. It was the smallest of touches, yet it carried a weight greater than words. "Strange human," she whispered. "You make promises as if you believe them." "I do," he replied simply. Together they approached the glowing forge. As they drew near, the machine stirred. The crystal core flared brighter, and a deep hum filled the chamber. The symbols in the air twisted into new shapes, glowing red as if sensing Seraphine's presence. She stood tall, her long hair flowing in the strange light, her crimson eyes reflecting the glow. "It recognizes me," she said. "It knows my blood." The forge's surface split open, revealing a space within like a chamber of light. It pulsed, waiting for her to step inside. Elias's hand tightened on his lantern, but he said nothing. He knew this was her choice. Seraphine glanced at him once more. For a moment she almost looked uncertain. Then she took a slow breath and stepped forward. The light swallowed her as the chamber closed around her. The forge roared to life. Energy surged through the pillars, racing along cracks in the floor, filling the chamber with blinding brilliance. Elias shielded his eyes, heart pounding. The hum rose into a deep, shaking sound that rattled his bones. Inside, Seraphine floated in light. Her body shone as streams of energy flowed into her veins. She felt every drop of her ancient blood ignite, burning with both pain and hope. The hunger within her screamed, thrashing as if trying to resist. But the forge pressed harder, rewriting her at the core. Only gratitude. Before either could say more, a new sound echoed through the chamber. A voice, deep and mechanical, filled the air. Unauthorized activation detected. Final defense protocol engaged. From the far walls, massive doors opened. Out stepped machines unlike the Guardians before, taller, darker, armed with weapons that glowed with the same light as the forge. Their eyes burned red and their steps shook the ground. Elias's relief turned to grim resolve. He lifted his plasma cutter once again. "Looks like the station doesn't want us leaving with its secret." Seraphine straightened, her pale face calm but fierce. "Then let us show it what a human and a Nixari can do together." The machines closed in, their weapons humming. The final battle was about to begin. The machines advanced steadily, their red eyes fixed on Elias and Seraphine. Each step they took sent vibrations through the floor, and the humming of their weapons filled the chamber. Elias gripped his plasma cutter tightly, the heat of the weapon comforting against his palm. Beside him, Seraphine's pale hands glowed faintly with the energy that now ran through her veins. She moved with a strength different from before, controlled, precise, alive. Elias glanced at her. "Are you ready?" She nodded, her crimson eyes softened to a deep amber glow. "I am ready." "Let them come." The first machine lunged, its massive frame swinging a weapon that could tear through metal. Seraphine leapt forward, sidestepping with incredible speed. Her fist struck the machine's chest, sending sparks flying. Elias fired at its joints, weakening it further. Together they moved in a synchronized rhythm, Seraphine striking with raw power, Elias targeting weak points with his cutter. But the machines kept coming, relentless. They adapted quickly, blocking attacks and swinging with greater precision. Elias's arms ached, sweat stinging his eyes, but he refused to falter. He looked at Seraphine, who moved with a grace he had never seen before. Her new strength was not the raw ferocity of hunger, but a controlled power that made her even more dangerous than before. One machine lunged at Elias from the side. He stumbled, barely dodging its swing. Seraphine was there in an instant, catching the weapon with her hands and ripping it free. The machine stumbled backward, giving Elias a moment to strike its leg. Sparks flew and it fell with a heavy crash. "This is not over," she said calmly. "There are too many." Elias swallowed hard, feeling the exhaustion in his body. "Then we keep moving. Find a way to shut them down completely." He noticed a control panel on the far side of the chamber, glowing faintly. If they could reach it, maybe they could disable the remaining machines. "That's it?" he shouted. "If we can reach that panel, we can stop them." Seraphine nodded. "Cover me. I will draw their attention." She moved forward, her steps swift and confident. The machines focused on her immediately, their weapons swinging toward her. Elias followed behind, taking careful shots at their weak points. Seraphine's attacks were precise and powerful, throwing them off balance, and Elias's cutter kept them from overwhelming her. Step by step, they advanced toward the control panel. Finally, they reached it. Elias crouched behind a pillar and began working on the panel, his fingers flying across the buttons and switches. Sparks and energy arcs danced around him as the machines pressed closer. Seraphine fought with everything she had, each punch and kick creating space for him to work. "Almost there," Elias shouted. A massive machine swung at Seraphine with incredible speed. She dodged but was hit lightly on the arm, staggering. Elias saw the motion and fired a precise shot at the machine's joint. It collapsed, giving Seraphine a moment to regain her balance. Finally, Elias pressed the final sequence on the panel. A deep hum filled the chamber, Then a sudden pulse of energy radiated outward. The machines froze mid-step, their red eyes dimming. Sparks ran through their armor, and one by one they collapsed to the floor, lifeless. Seraphine stepped back, breathing heavily, but standing tall. Elias lowered his plasma cutter, relief flooding through him. They had survived. For a moment, silence reigned. The chamber glowed softly with the remaining energy of the forge. Elias looked at Seraphine, who was staring at her hands. "It's done," he said quietly. "You're free. The hunger, it's gone." Seraphine closed her eyes, letting the reality settle in. For the first time in centuries, she felt the steady beat of her heart. Not the chaotic pulse of hunger, but life itself. She turned to Elias, and a faint, genuine smile appeared on her face. "I do not fully understand humans," she said softly. "You risk everything for others, even strangers." "Why?" Elias shrugged, wiping sweat from his brow. "Because that's who we are. We fight, we survive, and we help each other when we can. It doesn't make sense, but it works." She studied him, her amber eyes reflecting the glow of the chamber. "Perhaps that is why you survived. Perhaps that is why I survived. Your courage. It is strange, but it carries weight." Elias smiled, though tiredly. "Then let's make sure that weight carries us both home." They moved together through the station, the glow from the forge lighting their path. The broken machines and shattered walls no longer seemed threatening. Instead, the station felt almost alive, a witness to the strange bond between a human and the last of an ancient alien race. Finally, they reached the exit. Outside, the stars stretched endlessly, vast and silent. Elias looked at his ship in the distance, damaged but still repairable. He turned to Seraphine, who had never taken her eyes off him since they emerged. "Ready?" he asked. She nodded, her voice steady. "Yes, ready to see the stars again." With life in my veins, Elias led the way and she followed. Together, human and alien walked toward the ship side by side. No longer predator and prey, no longer hunter and hunted, partners, survivors, friends. As they boarded the ship, Elias glanced at Seraphine one last time. Her amber eyes caught his in the dim cockpit light, and for a fleeting moment he saw centuries of loneliness, hunger, and fear dissolve into something new. Hope. The engines roared to life and the ship lifted from the station. Stars stretched before them, endless and bright, carrying them toward unknown worlds. Elias smiled. Seraphine smiled. For the first time, both knew that humanity's courage, and the choice to trust, was a force strong enough to light even the darkest corners of the galaxy. And as they flew into the vastness of space, neither of them doubted its survival, courage, and the strength to choose life had won.